Here's something that could break the fantasy season. The Browns actually find a decent quarterback.
That's a good one. I like this.
The Browns, I don't know who it is, importantly. But the Browns,
you can't pick between the 5.
No, I don't know, and I'm not gonna. But if I did, it would honestly probably be Dylan Gabriel. But I'm not picking. Officially not picking, but it's Dylan Gabriel.
I got in trouble by a YouTube commenter for making a joke about Dylan Gabriel versus Shedeur. I didn't mean it in any inappropriate way. I just meant it that Dylan Gabriel went 2 rounds before Shedeur, and no one gives a flying fuck.
No
about
one cares.
Dylan Gabriel.
Right. They act like he was like a 7th round pick. He was drafted 2 rounds ahead of the guy who's now like presumed to be behind. So I think by far the funniest outcome is if Dylan Gabriel is good.
Oh, yes.
But it doesn't. Shedeur could be really good, right? Flacco could play the whole year. Kenny Pickett could get traded for a quarterback who can actually play. There's a number of ways that this could break.
That's not what I was expecting. I thought you were going to say like the Eagles fixed. His hands grew while he was in Philadelphia or something.
No, I have no faith in Pickett. But
all right, Pat, we're back with another episode of Let's. In typical you and I fashion, we're scrambling around. Not exactly a set in stone time on the calendar for us to record this very vibesian podcast that we have here. But I'm excited. You're in. I feel like we're going to get harsher takes now. You're not in your normal West Coast vibe, right?
It's been raining.
Just woke
yeah.
up.
It's June in New York. It's not. We got out here, and Brittany's got a stroller, and she was going up. She went over to Brooklyn to grab something, and so she's like going down and upstairs to get into the subway, and like people were just like rushing over and helping her carry the stroller up the stairs and stuff. And she's like, people here are like so nice and so friendly. Like all the MTA workers are like really helpful, and everyone's pointing out. I was just like in a great mood here. Like it's June. It's June in New York. Like it was not like this in January. I guarantee you.
That is so true. I mean, I'm not comparing the two, but you get similar in like smaller cities like St. Louis too. Like we have the wildest weather changes, right? We get -10 and insane ice storms and snowstorms. We've just been going through like tornado season. There's been a bunch of tornadoes in St. Louis and everything, and we're like, just get me to like late June. Let's get out of the storms. Let's get to the nice sunny weather. It is very nice in the summer here, but then it's like once July and August come, it's 105 degrees, and you're like we're all just like on edge. But then everybody's just like you got your cookouts and you're going to the lake and all that stuff in June, and then it's like you got like 3 weeks of everybody being happy.
It's beautiful. It's also, it can be pretty frustrating. I lived here for over a decade, and it's like you get May has those weekends. May is more unpredictable. So for visiting purposes, it was a little, wider range of outcomes to visit in May, right? June, June's higher floor. You know what you're going to get. It's going to be good. It might not be the best weekends are going to be in May because it's that first weekend. Everyone's like, oh my God, here it is, the summer. It's not winter at all anymore. No touches of winter. This is serious, awesome weather. Let's go have an incredible weekend. So that's going to be in May, but then in June, you're still going to have like some of that. And you don't get the weekends where it's like, how is it still not warm yet? So you don't have to worry about that. And then, by July, like I was always blown away basically by the 4th. The 4th's like the last hurrah, because then it's like it gets really hot. People start clearing out and going other places, and the city doesn't feel quite as alive. And August is like humid as hell. August has some nice weekends, but also there's sometimes you're like, I'm pretty sure I can't survive in this. The wet bulb temperature is not survivable now. So anyway, happy to be here for the best time to be in New York. September
100%,
also
yeah.
pretty nice. September is also
September
pretty nice.
for sure.
October.
Once you ease into football weather, like real football weather, right? A nice little brisk chill in the air, but comfortable to be outside. Yeah, just the best. So a segue into some football conversation. What we're going to talk about here today is scenarios that can play out this year, 2025 fantasy football, that could totally break the fantasy landscape. And they may not necessarily be, even the things that maybe Pat or I like. They could be some things that go against what Pat or I like. They could be negative things. They could be positive things, but things that we may not, foresee coming in 2025, that if they do happen, you better have something, right? It could be you want nothing of that situation, you want all of it, you want a certain player. There's a bunch of different stuff that can happen that I think this is like the most fascinating part of any fantasy season, but best ball for me specifically, because I can't change my right. I can't make trades. I can't pick up players off waivers. We gotta, once the draft is over, you've made that decision of what these scenarios might be. And every year there's something. We may not get it right. It may not have been predictable, right? It could be injuries or what have you. I always think back to, we've been doing this a long time now, but I always think back to the year when Mark Andrews just like straight broke fantasy as a fifth or sixth round pick at tight end. And everybody knew he was awesome, right? Everybody was, Mark Andrews is like probably the best receiver. He's right there with Travis Kelce as the best receiving tight end in the NFL. We love him, but the Ravens don't pass. Right. The Ravens don't throw the ball. The defense is too good and they run the ball. And then just chaos broke out. Their entire defense got hurt. I remember playing DFS that year, and the final 8 weeks was you just came in, you said, okay, what passing game is playing the Ravens? Because they had a bunch of XFL corners out there. They even lost Lamar Jackson. So the defensive thing was so catastrophic that even without Lamar got hurt. And you would think, shit, Tyler Huntley's the quarterback. It's over for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, it was hardly like an ideal situation for Andrews.
It wasn't even perfect, but
Tyler
this
Huntley.
thing happened, and it was like, Mark Andrews is scoring 25 half PPR points every single week. He's a legendary upside running back.
Totally.
That's at tight end.
At tight end.
So those kinds of things happen, right? Every single year. You are on vacation essentially. So we're going to let you kick us off with what do you think is kind of the first thing that came to your mind when we started thinking about these scenarios?
I've changed the location from which I'm working more than on vacation, but it's nice. It's a nice location to be. I'm enjoying it. I'll kick off with one in the first round. And it's a difficult one for me to know exactly how to play. Because I really, really like the receivers at the end of the first round. I think they're awesome picks. And I think building teams is a lot easier if you take a receiver in the first round this year. But if CMC is just CMC, then fantasy's broken. If it's because it could be right, he's just CMC, and he was available in the late first or even early second, and that's gonna break everything we think about the season. If he's just him again. I kind of don't think he will be right.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'll be kind of like a version of CMC that's not quite as potent, but isn't totally dusty. And then he'll end up going in the third round next year or something. Would be my best guess for how this plays out. But we know just how dominant of a fantasy asset he was a couple years ago. He was the 101. No one even blinked. He missed the whole season due to an injury, and he never wasn't the 101. That's how we're whatever. I'm taking CMC.
There was a guy who came into the Spike Week Discord because last year I did not have CMC ranked first. I had CMC ranked third or fourth overall, which this is not me trying to toot my own horn. There was a lot of misses, in the rankings, plenty. Particularly as it pertains to the running back position. Let's not talk about the Saquon and Derrick Henry rankings, okay?
All right, I'll be right back.
Go ahead. But I had Christian McCaffrey ranked, third or fourth or something, and he was such a consensus 101 or at a minimum top 2 pick, because every once in a while you get in a draft where he doesn't go first. he was such a consensus. We had folks coming into the Discord. I remember a conversation last summer of being like, so like, what is your strategy for your subscribers with Christian McCaffrey? And I was like, well, I wouldn't take him until like the 4th pick. But that was like a insane hot take to be the guy who was not really drafting Christian McCaffrey, because everybody was just like, he's Christian McCaffrey, dude. What are you talking about? He's the 101. Okay, you like one receiver ahead of him, he's the 102. But it was like he was so locked in, like you said, regardless of anything that's any context, and nothing. No one cared. He's Christian McCaffrey. It's the 49ers. It's wheels up, just draft him.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the last year, the fact that it's insane to have, the guy not as the top guy, but instead like 4th, and then ends up being a disaster to have taken him at 4. Like any teams where you took him at 4 also lost.
To take him ever. Yeah.
To take him ever. Yeah. There was no good price on him. Just, it's a reminder that we're going to be really, really wrong about a bunch of stuff that everyone feels super confident about. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the easiest ones for me to see. I mean, honestly, the 49ers offense in general is one where it's like they could break fantasy by just being the 49ers at extremely reduced prices, right? I think Purdy is not, Purdy's priced fine. I think he's a pretty good pick where he goes, but it's not like, oh, what an incredible deal. But it's all the weapons, right? Kittle is definitely underpriced in my opinion. You can get Jawan Jennings is the first wide receiver going off the board. We're used to having to pay like round 2, round 3 prices for the top receivers on the 49ers. Get the first one.
Often for both of them.
Often for both, yeah. Like a round 2 and round 3.
Both,
yeah. So 2 guys off the board in the top like 30 picks versus the first guys going off at pick 60. Yeah. CMC 101 and then 2 more players in the top 30. And instead CMC is like 1-2 turn-ish, maybe, up to 10 or whatever now. And then you got Ayuk's going much later because the injury. Pearsall, Jennings, I mean, much, much, much cheaper than we're used to. Kittle's a little more expensive than last year, but it's not like Kittle's wildly. I mean, you could argue that, like, given like these prices are wrong on the receivers. Like Kittle maybe should be like a 2-3 turn pick himself, unless we're really wrong about Jennings or Ayuk's health or Pearsall. I'm generally playing it through Kittle, Jennings, and a little bit of Ayuk, the receiver stuff. But it's easy to see the 49ers just being like one of those things. Well, like having 49ers was one of the main answers for the year.
Slam dunk. Totally agree. I think the 49ers, led by Christian McCaffrey, like it's almost like every variable of the 49ers is like yeah, you see this like you said, CMC is just CMC. CMC isn't CMC. And now it's not like they're not going to score points. They scored a bunch when he didn't play last year, right? Whether it was Mason, Garendo, whatever, use check lining up at running back, they're going to score points. So whether it's CMC, it's like, oh God, yes, you wanted CMC. If it's not him, there's still
you want the other guys.
You want the other guys, and I'm not saying you don't want them, even if it is CMC. I'm just saying there's like I can't like think of a scenario other than, of course, a Brock Purdy injury, which like whatever. And even then, I don't know, Shanahan does this wizardry. He's got Mac Jones now. Like Mac Jones was making BTJ relevant. Like I just, it's hard for me to envision. Now, can I say specifically, like, I agree, Kittle is my favorite. Kittle is my highest owned 49er. But like, do I want probably all of these guys in my portfolio? Because like, look at all these scenarios where like you just want 49ers. I think that they're just awesome picks, like just about all of them.
Pearsall scares me. Feels like a little bit like I don't know, like he didn't flash that much, but of course last year was really weird. He literally got shot, comes back, has, productive final, little stretch of the season. But I think he's maybe like a touch overpriced, and Ayuk is probably who I like more of those two. But man, I mean, Jennings, I actually like, I'm kind of bullish on Jennings. Scares me because it's like an older receiver breakout, and I guess he broke out in his 4th year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but it's like he wasn't like any kind of prospect that we were that excited about. He's mostly kind of a slot. Like there's lots of reasons to be skeptical, but
Yeah,
I was looking at his first read stuff recently, and it was pretty good last year. Like he was already the guy that the offense was designed to go through in a pretty significant way, and that was with
Ayuk on the field.
With Ayuk and then with Debo. Ayuk missed
Mm-hmm.
time, and then he was with Debo. So there wasn't a ton of. I think this one game where both guys were out, but with Debo there, he was still like a big piece of what they were doing through the passing game. And Ayuk has never been like a true target dominator. He's someone who can draw targets deep and, like 10 plus yards downfield. He can consistently draw targets and then add after the catch, which is really valuable. But it's not like he's never been like a Puka type where it's like you just every play is just going to this dude. So Jennings is probably the guy other than Kittle that I'm most excited about. And it feels a little weird, but I think maybe it was like a legit breakout last year. I've compared him a little bit to like Robert Woods in his prime with the Rams. Like I could kind of see it be like that. By the way, do want to mention for the video watchers here, it probably looks like I'm drinking chocolate milk, and I just want to get it out. This is cold brew. That's what I'm drinking. If you're curious, because I was like, this looks like chocolate milk.
If you don't think I had a Yoo-hoo joke preloaded for later in this, you are sadly mistaken. I want.
You just muted yourself.
Now I unplugged my mic, so we'll see if I fix my audio. I'm laughing at my own Yoo-hoo jokes and looking at Jauan Jennings stats on a Monday afternoon. What a life! But we do have to shout. I'm sure everybody that's watching this remembers it. Jauan had a pretty good year. He was pretty efficient, all that kind of stuff. On one hand, you have like a bunch of good games and a bunch of good target earning from Jauan, but he is like that kind of typical possession-y, like you said,
totally
big slot type guy or whatever. But I also just think if you do what he did to the Rams in week 3 of last season, 12 targets, 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's kind of one of those. This is a little bit of the Quentin Johnston like conundrum, the Gabe Davis playoff game conundrum, where it's like when you show me that you can just like take over an NFL game.
Yeah.
How much do we? Is it overweighting the one game? Of course, he has a full season, so I'm not saying it's not the same thing as QJ and Gabe, but I'm just saying that one game was so good that it's like, but that's a feather in your cap, and also just like a, is he more of kind of a just consistent good football player? Like I don't know what that answer is, but I also feel like I'm not getting like my feet are not to the fire on this price on Jauan Jennings to find out.
I don't think they are either. And the thing with Jennings is like it's stability, right? He stayed on the 49ers. Other guys left.
Got an extension before last year.
Yeah,
got extended.
And so Debo's gone, and then Ayuk's coming back off injury. So, and it's like Pearsall's the guy where you're projecting more like, okay, it's time for you to show more than you did last year. We're ecstatic if Jauan Jennings is the same hyper efficient player that he was last year, in a bigger role in terms of running more routes. But to my point in the first read stuff is his role was actually pretty sweet when on the field last year. And so, he's just like it's hard to see like who's displacing him now that the Debo's gone and Ayuk's not going to be probably healthy to start the year. So, I mean, Ayuk could miss like several weeks to start the year this season. So yeah,
although he's golfing, he was golfing.
Is he? Oh,
he only had a sleeve on his, and I think he might have done a TikTok where he was dancing and he didn't have a brace on or something. So everybody's monitoring, sleuthing on the internet to find out how Brandon Ayuk's knee is feeling. But I'm a little more cautious about Ayuk and maybe a little higher on Pearsall than you. But I acknowledge exactly what you just mentioned, that like it's a lot of projection for Ricky Pearsall, but it's also I think we're gonna find out. Like he might be a better redraft pick. Like if I'm comparing the two, like Jauan is maybe a better best ball pick, and Pearsall's like maybe a better redraft pick. Where
I agree with that.
You'll know in the first month whether the Pearsall thing was probably right or not. right? Because assuming
Yeah.
he pulled his hammy again, so we'll see, how the offseason goes. But it's only June, he'll be fine. But it's like in that first month, if Ayuk is slow to get up to speed, right, or even missing time or on PUP or whatever, it's like, okay, it's your time, Ricky. Like earn some targets, produce a little bit, or if it's just like Juwan Kittle CMC show, and he's like, this rotational role player, you'll be like, okay, time to move on. It is what it is. Ayuk will come back and kind of banish him to the shadow realm.
Yeah. I also think with Jennings that one of the things that we really love about the 49ers offense and the Rams offense is that like they are able to take elements of the run game and kind of bring it to the pass game, like in terms of like they're creating passing plays that are like they're out scheming people in the passing game so that like a play is going to be designed to, maybe it's not one specific guy, but you're putting stress on the defense. It's a run play, but you throw it, right? Like that. There's not. It's like not like the quarterback sitting back and just like looking around, trying to. There's a plan about how you're attacking. Shanahan set up the defense a couple different, and now he has the defense thinking they're gonna operate this one way, and he's actually pivoting off of something he showed earlier, specifically to try to open up this other route, and the quarterback knows exactly what's happening. So it's more of a system than some other passing games. And Juwan Jennings has already shown that he can be highly effective in that system. So it's like, is he the best route runner? Is he amazing after the catch? All that stuff. Like, I don't care as much. Like, I'm betting on him to continue to have like an important role within the system, given how awesome he was last year and productive while kind of being a key cog for them last year. So I'm not having to project. That's what worries me more with Pearsall compared to Jennings. Like I'm having to project that Pearsall becomes a key cog within the system in his second season. But Jennings already was a key cog in the system and was very productive. And now I just get to bet on him continuing to do that. With Debo leaving and with Ayuk dealing with the injury and coming back from that, it's hard to see like how Jennings isn't involved in a pretty significant way for much of the year.
Totally agreed. The only other thing I'll add on the 49ers is, you don't have to take my word for it. You can Google it up and look at some smart people's like projections for what NFL defenses are going to be like, because a big, so we've seen this with the Bengals, and I think we're going to continue to see it with the Bengals. But a big reason, it's not the only reason. Of course, Ja'Marr Chase is awesome, Joe Burrow's awesome, right? T's awesome. But a reason why Ja'Marr Chase goes from 130 targets to almost 180 targets is because they are constantly giving up points, and they're having to, of course, they have a great pass rate, all that kind of stuff. But when you're giving up 30 balls plus every single week, and you have Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase, that's when you get these outright. It's the Ravens thing. Even with Tyler Huntley at quarterback, Mark Andrews is getting an absurd amount of targets because they're giving up so many points. They got to try to stay in the game. The 49ers, with as you would expect, right? Why is Debo gone? Why did they probably draft Ricky Pearsall in the first round? Why are they doing some of the things that they're doing? Well, when you pay Brock Purdy, who I think is a very good NFL quarterback, how good would he be in a different situation? We may never see, honestly. But when you pay that dude $50 million, CMC's on the books, you extended Kittle. Juwan's not making a bunch of money, but he's got a little bit of coin this year. You extended Ayuk, right? Like, there's not that somewhere you got to cut, right? You got to cut somewhere, and the defense is getting a lot of that cut. They're going to try to outscore some people a little bit more this year. They're anywhere from like 20 to near last in the league based upon some smarter people's like defensive rankings, and I think that makes sense. So if you do,
that's a good point.
You do get into a little more shootout stuff. Like they haven't been a very high pass rate team historically.
Right.
Partially, A, because that's how Shanny plays, but B, the defense has been fucking awesome. Like their defense, that's why they keep going to Super Bowls and conference championships, because the roster is great. They've kind of had to pay the piper now, finally, right? The Purdy thing comes through and 50. You go from $1 million to your quarterback to 50. Like it's kind of a big difference. Somebody's got to go.
The other thing is that I believe in Purdy. I think Purdy's good. I think Purdy's like a million times better than Jimmy G was.
Yes.
I thought last year he was really impressive. The system kind of broke down in some ways. I think a big part of that was not having CMC, and kind of a lot of it's built around the run game and effectively moving the ball. in the run game, and then being able to throw to CMC underneath and all that. And Purdy was having to hold the ball longer and make plays himself, and was doing so very efficiently. Like there
Shockingly
was
good ad-libber for a Shanahan
shockingly
quarterback.
good. Yeah, like he has a whole nother level to his game than Jimmy G. Like he's not just the dude who executes the scheme, but he does that very well. So in a situation where they do have to pass a lot more, I actually do believe that Purdy can make that fun for us. It's not how they would prefer to do it, but I think that it could be pretty fun.
I could not possibly agree more. I moved Purdy actually to the front of that tier of quarterbacks, which is a ginormous tier
It's
of
ginormous, yeah.
awesome picks. So it's not really saying anything, but I wanted to make it clear, like, I think I'm making Purdy the priority out of this group, and then moved up to all the other 49ers too, to be like, okay, if you're going to make Purdy the priority, you got to get some of these pass catchers, right? So the Juwans and such of the world. Kittle, I mean, I have Kittle at the 3-4 turn, and he goes, closer to pick 50. So totally in on all the 49ers. That's a lot of positive talk, Pat. The team that I'm going to bring up and take it down the toilet bowl here, be a little bit more negative, because most of mine are very positive. Be a little bit more negative is actually the team that the 49ers play in week 17, the old best ball finals. Chicago Bears, right?
I have this
We're all
one too.
excited. We're all excited. I figured there'd be a couple crossovers. This one just jumped. This one, and now again, this is scenarios that could happen. This isn't my prediction. Just like everyone else, I'm excited for Ben Johnson. I liked Caleb Williams as a prospect. I like Luther Burden well enough, and Colston Loveland well enough, and DJ Moore well enough, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I saw they upgraded their offensive line. I get it. I have the same takes that everybody else does. The problem is that when you do start to dig into the Chicago Bears, you're like, boy, we are really doing this unearned boost to a lot of players, to the quarterback, possibly even to the coach. I've listened to, I'll get the Ben Johnson one out of the way quickly, because I don't know that I even believe this, but if you listen to some Lions fans, they kind of think Ben Johnson is the least of the guy they're worried about the least. That right, Aaron Glenn's gone, and they definitely don't want to lose Dan Campbell. They feel like Ben Johnson's he's smart, he's a good offensive coordinator, but in terms of this is the guy that's going to lead the Bears to the Super Bowl type thing, it feels more like Mike McDaniels than Kyle Shanahan. You know what I mean? It feels like that kind of a situation. And then you have,
he's kind of a hard ass, which I don't think is maybe going to resonate that well.
He came in and told DJ Moore to cut the shit.
Yeah.
He's told DeAndre Swift, he's definitely being a little bit it feels like
Campbell's exerts all this tough, big man energy. But then when you what are you about? He's like, I'm about people feeling like they have the ability to kind of do things the way they want to do them and feel respected. And I'm taking input and people feel validated and heard. It's the least
he's
toxic,
the biggest softy ever.
He's a big softy. Yeah. Yeah. He listens to Metallica and rages, but he fundamentally he's a really mature guy.
He drinks 4 of those coffee yoo-hoos that Pat is drinking every morning, and struts out at 6'5", 260 or whatever after ripping on the bench, and then he hugs Jameson Williams.
Right.
He's like, I love you. I love you, buddy.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna figure out a way to get this guy to believe in himself again and get the most out of. He's it's very positive. Yeah.
No,
so
you would not expect it.
You're not expecting, but it'd be funny if Ben Johnson was the opposite, where he seems kind of quiet and just would probably let everyone do their thing, and then he comes up to DJ Moore and he's like, if you do that shit again, I'm gonna cut your ass.
DJ Moore even said that he called him out on day one and was like, you're not fucking pulling that shit ever again, which simultaneously has me concerned as hell and has me okay, DJ Moore at least is now he said it, he's acknowledged, I can't do that, whatever, I gotta be a leader, what blah blah blah. So I don't have the DJ Moore hates football concerns that we've heard. I think DJ Moore will be all right, but will the Bears offense be all right?
Doesn't cut it. I think that's why this is a good one. It's all right, it's not good enough, man. We're putting this. We did this with the Jaguars a couple years ago. We did this with and that was the Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. And that, so it made sense, but We did it with the Texans last year. You know, we've done this. This is a thing we do.
PFF Bobby, we were raving about PFF
Yep.
Bobby, and now we're
Yep.
like, that dude was the biggest fraud in the history of offensive coordinators. We did this not because of the coaching, but because of some form of an offensive upgrade when Russ went to Denver.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
It was like Denver, we all were totally convinced, and I'm not sure how right or wrong we were, that everybody on that offense was awesome. Right? That was Judy, Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Albert O. Remember that was Albert O. That was Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon in that backfield. We were all like, holy shit, dude. They played the Chiefs in week 17.
Played the Chiefs in week 17. Yeah.
So it was just like, what's the best thing here? It's of course. Let Russ cook, right? Get him out to Denver. Well, there were some issues, right? Russ wasn't as good anymore as we thought. The coaching was an absolute abomination.
Nathaniel Hackett, dude, he's gonna unlock Russ.
Yeah. Maybe the talent wasn't as good, right? As we thought. Jerry Judy's not as good. Albert O is not even a fucking NFL football player, and we were taking him in the 12th round or whatever. Yeah. No one rose that summer more by ADP than Albert O when because he went from like undrafted to, and then they traded Noah Fant, right, to Seattle as a part of the Russ trade. So anyway, it feels like that to me, and that doesn't mean it's going to be. Sometimes we're right about the things that we're bullish on. It makes logical sense. Ben Johnson, offensive line upgrades, right, weaponry upgrades with Burden and Loveland. I get it. The problem is that we're wrong about this all the time. They upgraded the offensive line. They didn't replicate the fucking Lions or Eagles offensive line. It's an upgrade is different from turning into an incredible offensive line. I think it will be fine, but this isn't the Eagles and this isn't the Lions. Caleb was objectively a fucking disaster last year. Like, this wasn't just like, some rookie ups and downs, right? Like Drake May had some rookie ups and downs because he was in a bad situation. Caleb couldn't complete a forward pass many games and was rattled, and what that pressure, he was not dealing with it very well. He was inaccurate. His decision making was terrible. Like, there was not much good to draw from the kid. So we're just assuming
he did have some games. He had some games.
He had a couple, but yeah. So I'm also at full bias because I was also on vacation, but I played. They played the Patriots in Chicago in like week 12. I don't know. I'm making
something
week
like
12.
That. Yeah.
And Caleb was dirt cheap. Finally, I'm like, all right, we're buying the dip finally on Caleb in DFS, right? The Patriots defense stinks. I don't got to worry about playing any of those Patriots slappy bringbacks, right? Just Caleb to DJ Moore or Caleb to whoever, right? Caleb to Rome or whatever. And like, they're all cheap. And I can get all the supers, right? I can finally play Saquon because I can get all this cheap stuff in there. And I watched every snap. And I mean, he might as well try to throw left-handed. It was so bad. It was, and it wasn't just, it was taking sacks. It was bailing out, right? He was seeing Sam Darnold level ghosts. It was very bad for Caleb. Like, I would encapsulate the full season as very bad for Caleb. I still believe, right? Just like everybody else, but everyone believes. So like, if everyone is in on this new Bears, right? We're giving everybody a fucking mulligan. DJ Moore gets a mulligan. Rome Odunze gets a mulligan. Luther Burden gets a mulligan for his final college season. Right. We're just like,
that's true.
Whatever.
He does get a mulligan.
Yeah, he gets a mulligan for that. Caleb gets a mulligan. Like, everybody is just getting a mulligan. And
Colston Loveland might miss most of training camp, but he'll get a mulligan for that.
Who gives a shit? Colston Loveland, first round pick, mulligan. Like, everybody, we're writing off all of the, but we don't do that for everyone else. Right. It's like when we have when there's other offenses that we have concerns about, we'll bring them up and be scared about it. The Bears is just like, oh, who gives a shit? Ben Johnson's there now. They upgraded the offensive line, right? Probably. And it's like, I don't know. What if they still stink? Like, what if Caleb stinks and Ben Johnson can't turn this offense around?
Well, basically what it is that there's the thing we just did with the 49ers, which is, what if this team is just like, the answer is have this team. And the Bears are such an obvious candidate to be that like, this is the year that you're just like, having Bears was the right answer because of how big of an upgrade Ben Johnson really could be. And then you also do have the offensive line upgrades, which, like, are legit upgrades. And then, I mean, adding Colston Loveland and Luther Burden to what kind of already felt like semi-crowded in terms of the weaponry. Mm-hmm. And then they don't have like a really, like a running back that they're going to be able to trust. So they like kind of have to. The passing game really should be the engine of the offense. I mean, it's just really obvious that there's a lot of upside here, but then you're contending with everyone else to draft those players, and so the prices are not cheap on any of these guys. I think they could. I think the Bears could pay off. It's hard for me to see the answer now at these prices being like have Bears. It could be have the right Bears for sure. And so I do take Bears, but I don't tend to take much DJ Moore right now. I don't take that much Roma Dunze right now. I have a lot of Burden. Burden has
Burden
fallen.
goes in like the 130s on DraftKings now.
It's wild. So yeah.
I wasn't taking him, like I was always ahead of on ADP, but I just was more ahead on some other guys like in that range of wide receiver. Now he's just straight plummeted. So now he is kind of a priority for me.
Like I'll take Bishal Tootin and then come back and get Burden afterwards on DraftKings. Exactly. It's nuts. Like I literally did that last week. Like it's really wild.
It sets up well for this Niners stuff too. Like if I'm doing then, if I do my Purdy, Juwan, or Kittle or whatever, it's like, well, I just wait 6 rounds and then you can get Luther Burden. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. So and Burden's the late season upside. You don't need him to pay off as like this mega hit at that price. I mean, dude, he's going like Burden's going. That's like where Pearsall was going last year on Underdog. You're getting Burden on DraftKings at like the same pick number as Pearsall on Underdog last year. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. It's truly insane. And even on Underdog, around pick 100-ish, I think Burden is an awesome pick. Loveland, I'm a little more torn on. I'm hoping that he, because he is expected to miss some of training camp with this shoulder. So I'm hoping that we get a discount on that. I don't think that's really priced in. Like the fear of it, I don't think is priced in. So I bet you we do get a bit, maybe not crazy cheaper, but I bet he does end up falling in August, which I'll buy the discount at that point because, it probably shouldn't be a big discount, but maybe we'll get one. I draft the running backs right now. I draft Swift and I draft Roschon because I don't see. I mean, Chubb just. I don't know if it's fully 100% locked in,
but he's
right now. But he's going to Houston, and then Dobbins has been tied to Denver, and will go to LA if he doesn't sign anywhere because of that tag. So the options of like any competition seem to be drying up. And they haven't really been tied to anybody. Maybe they trade for someone or something.
I think they're waiting for other stuff to shake. Like they don't know who it is just yet, but they're like, whatever, some guys get cut sometimes. Maybe they're waiting for whatever happens in Jacksonville, right? Between if ETN or Tank possibly become available. I know the writing on the current writing on the walls, that's not the case, but it's June. Shit happens. Like, we don't know. Who knows what goes on in the Chiefs backfield, right? Eli Mitchell becomes available or whatever.
Totally.
Like, I don't. Yeah. There's just like something that might shake loose, and I think they're just like waiting under the tree, right? To be like, okay, we don't know what's going to fall, but something's probably going to fall.
Yeah, but I think and there's downside with both backs, and pretty big way. But neither of them's like that expensive for the upside. So I do, I didn't want to be drafting DeAndre Swift, but I am.
But I don't think there's a scenario. I shouldn't say that. I think there's very few scenarios in which DeAndre Swift goes to 0. I think there's a lot of scenarios where Roschon goes to 0. Like what? I guess a trade, a true. But even then, like
he was basically benched by Ben Johnson the last time he played.
So what? Again, we have a core group of Lions slappies in the Spike League Discord, and what they will tell you. I'm just reporting the news. Don't shoot the messenger. is that that was who was their running back coach? God damn it. Deuce Staley?
Yeah, maybe.
Was the Lions running back coach. He hated Swift and he controlled the running back rotations. Ben Johnson I'm not saying Ben Johnson loves DeAndre Swift, but he doesn't hate him so much. Now take that again. I'm just telling you what some of the Detroit folks are saying. It true, not true. I don't know, but I think it's like there has been the other thing to mention. Our good friend Coach Speak Index. They haven't said a goddamn word about Roschon. Like literally,
they don't really talk about Roschon.
Monungai is getting more, and now that could just be rookie stuff. But they'll talk about Swift and they'll talk about Monungai a little bit. They haven't said a word about Roschon Johnson. So I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm kind of like waiting. You know what I mean? I'm like, is he really going to rise that much to? But like, I'm scared that like he's the guy.
But Nungai is such a bad prospect though that I really have a hard time.
See, I liked him. I liked him better, but he's my, which is fitting because he's Rutgers. He's like the Pacheco of just like this team was so bad.
Yeah, but Pacheco is fast.
But they just, yeah, exactly. The problem is he's like a bruiser, and Pacheco was more of a burner. But I think they built the whole entire plane out of Kyle Monangai at Rutgers, and sometimes those are those are the guys that the coaches come in and like he's going to get what's blocked, and he runs really hard, and he's really physical, and he always
he does run really hard,
and he always falls forward as like
also runs like an old man according to Bieniemy. That seems bad, but you know.
Speaking of, who Ben Johnson could be is Bieniemy. Is Erik Beimfohr, that just like great offensive coordinator. Everybody's like, why isn't this guy getting jobs? And you're like, because he's a fucking asshole. Like everyone hates him.
Yeah, no, but I do agree that Roschon could be nothing. I mean, that's the tricky part about the backfield is like this could really be, could be bad. But at least with the backfield, you get to kind of like I like playing it through the cheaper parts of the passing offense that could be coming on down the stretch. And so I win that way. I get the points when they matter the most, is the play. I also am paying a lot less for them. So, maybe I don't need the Bears to absolutely crush.
Right.
I can just have them be like, have their moments. And then playing it through the backfield, they're cheaper. And then maybe, I get to kind of scoop up some of the touchdowns and some of the fantasy goodness without having to pay full price. But yeah, I mean, it's not that DJ Moore is a terrible pick, but it definitely scares me. We've talked about him. I don't think it's good that they're like, hey, I really dislike the way you handled.
I hate how you do your job.
I hate how you do your job.
You should change that.
Anyway,
that's like if somebody says like, change your face.
To working with you.
Yeah, wasn't it like Step Brothers or whatever that Rob Riggles is like, I hate you. I just want to punch change your face. Like change your face. Like that's what they're telling DJ Moore. Like, stop being yourself, please.
At the same time, Moore he could look very obvious in retrospect, Yeah,
I mean, if the Bears offense is awesome, he's going to be good.
He's clearly the one who would benefit the most. So, Odunze is probably the one I kind of have the hardest time clicking right now.
It's just he was very bad, and we don't have a track. You can at least tell yourself the story. Like DJ Moore's been very good for a long time in bad situation, and he's basically always been in a bad situation, at least for wide receiver fantasy production. He's been in bad situations. We've seen it. If the offense is good, I can clearly see DJ Moore's just DJ, right? It's like not the CMC levels, but it's like CMC is just CMC. It's like DJ Moore's just DJ Moore, and Caleb and Ben Johnson.
And there's no reason to sulk. He's in the best situation of his entire life.
Right.
He's never had a good situation in the NFL like one time.
He may have hated football for the last 7 years, but this is the year when he might actually enjoy it a little bit.
It's June in New York City for DJ Moore.
They might
he's having a great
playoffs, right? Like they might win. He's not playing on a 5-win team, catching passes from Brandon Allen or whatever.
Yeah,
it's I think he had Kyle Allen, but a bunch of the Allens, right? And Teddy Bridgewater's like the best quarterback he's ever played with. This is good for him. But
that's what makes the Bears one interesting, is because they could having the right Bears really could be the thing that breaks fantasy, but then also the Bears sucking could also break fantasy.
And it also is one of those where if this 49er stuff we're talking about is for real, the Bears could be the absolute disaster, regular season picks. And then, but the offense is still they're not going to bench Caleb, and Ben Johnson is still there. He can manufacture a couple touchdowns. The 49ers defense is worse, right? Purdy's ripping it up and scoring a bunch of points. You're like, oh shit, Burden just went 6 for 102 in week 17, and he had 450 receiving yards all year. Right, that's like Ricky Pearsall did that. I was in
the 12th round on DraftKings.
Ricky Pearsall. I'm writing something about just kind of some of the similar things we're talking about here today. But Ricky Pearsall from weeks 1 to 16 last year caught 17 passes for 190 yards and 1 touchdown on 340 snaps total snaps. It's he did absolutely nothing, and then he went 8 for 141 and 1 in week 17 because that's just sometimes that shit happens. And the 49ers offense was a little disappointing last year. It's just to all this, I'm definitely worried about this scenario where the Bears break fantasy in a very bad way. The one guy who I feel is like a little bit shielded from that is Luther Burden at that price, where it's like, if it all goes to shit, is he becoming the Pearsall of last season? Like, I can see that condition playing
out. Yeah, no, I think. Sorry, Brittany came in. I got distracted. But you're saying Burden can break fantasy even if
he's like the one guy. If the Bears break fantasy in a negative way, I could still. He's like
Burden
the only
off.
caveat here. Yeah,
Burden paying that would be so funny if that is how Burden pays off. That like the Bears being incredibly disappointing, but then Burden kind of like getting like some screens. Like he's like sort of Kadarius Toney, like on the Giants when they're like whatever, let's just feed this guy a bunch of targets and we can trust
Caleb can't complete a ball downfield anyway, so we might as well give it to this guy who's good with the ball in his hands. That's all he did at fucking Mizzou for a year. So
he shouldn't be this cheap.
Difference?
That's realistic. Like 2 weeks at the end of the season, he pays off his ADP. I really don't get why he's fallen this far.
Yeah, so we simultaneously landed on the Bears could break fantasy in a negative way, and yet their second round pick wide receiver would then break fantasy in a positive way.
Our third eye is open. You cannot accuse us of having the third eye closed.
Yes, 100%. All right, we did Niners, we did Bears. What else do you got?
All right, this will break fantasy in a couple different ways. Liam Coen is a genius, just straight up.
I love this one.
It's like we're talking like Ben Johnson. That's 2024. He's exposed. He's the enemy. No one cares. Coen. The answer was Coen. This dude, in a worse situation in Tampa Bay, gets Chris Godwin back in the slot. Right. We're all excited about Canales. He's playing Godwin out of position. He gets all this love. Coen comes in. He installs him as kind of the engine of the offense, still getting good production on Mike Evans, then loses him. Offense still productive. Kate Otton's going off. This dude's designing great offense all season. Gets the head coaching job. Says the name of a city, kind of weird. Duval. And it's over.
Depress the Jags prices in one stupid phrase.
Not city, county. Excuse me, Jacksonville. But yeah. So that's it. Literally, he said Duval weird, and I swear, it crushed. No one fell on Duval, but rises didn't happen. There are alternate universes where he has like a slightly shorter press conference and. And Trevor Lawrence is going like 30 picks higher. like I swear to you. And I mean, obviously Brian Thomas is, he's going to kind of go where he's going, and Hunter's probably going about the same in this world. But I think there's scenarios where Tootin, Etienne, Lawrence, Strange, De'Ami Brown, like all of those guys are just way higher, and getting Jaguars stuff is just more difficult. You got to pay up for it. And in those universes, the payoff would be slightly less, but still pretty strong. And I could see, at these prices, having Jaguars being one of the most obvious in retrospect ways to win the season. You break fantasy just by Jaguars. Jaguars was one of the answers, kind of like the Bucs last year. And I mean, we were very excited at different points for Trevor Lawrence. I think everyone would have told you at the time that they both went number one that Trevor Lawrence was a better prospect than Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
And Baker's fall from by a lot. Yeah. Baker's fall from grace was much, much, much more concerning than Trevor Lawrence's. I mean, it was unclear if Baker was ever even going to be a starter again. After he was gone from Carolina, it looked like his career was over.
McVay saved his career.
McVay saved his career. Yeah. And then he gets like kind of a, we'll give you a shot deal in Tampa Bay. So
and then he turns into a top 8 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, not to say that's going to happen for sure or anything, but it's just one of those ones where in retrospect, you're like, yeah, better quarterback, has weapons. The weapons are awesome potentially. And I mean, it's all like ETN has had his moments where he looked really good. He could benefit from better coaching. Bashal Tutin has some really exciting elements to his profile. Brenton Strange flashed some target earning ability last year. We've got De'Ami Brown was actually once kind of an interesting prospect and is coming off, a season that got him paid. And then and he only needs to be the number 4 downfield passing option. He could be behind Strange and still like add value to the offense. And then, you've got Hunter, one of the coolest prospects of all time at any position because he plays 2 of them. And then Brian Thomas is coming off this awesome season. So it's just an offense that you could see it truly like exploding, dictating high scoring overall game script to their opponents, us wanting like to be investing in Jaguars games, us being like, targeting Jaguars games for bring back stuff, for game stacks, like all of that. And I think a big part of that is just Liam Coen bringing just a much, much better designed offense to Jacksonville, and redeeming himself for saying Duval super weird.
Yeah, it is one of those where I always like make the jokes over the course of the summer about like we want to target, like this is like specific to best ball, but like the island of misfit toys type guys where it's like, no, he's really good, right? This was kind of like before Kyron became Kyron. It was like the Kyron thing that people are like, he's real small, man. Like, and he's kind of slow. Like, is he going to be a thing? And it's like, I don't know. He was wildly productive. He plays on passing downs. He's like the best pass protector in college, and they love him. So whatever. I'm getting a discount because he's on the island, right? He doesn't look like Derrick Henry and he doesn't look like Saquon Barkley. So and I know he's not that guy, but from a fantasy standpoint, who gives a fuck? Like he's going to produce, right? I didn't know that the coach giving one of the worst quotes in a press conference ever was like adjacent to this island. Normally it's, like you have some wart about your profile. This is not one that I foresaw coming. But I think it's relevant. I also think people finally gave up on Trevor Lawrence. Like generally speaking, it's like just that people have given up finally. They're like, hey, he can't keep getting away with this. Where I draft 15% of Trevor Lawrence and stack the Jaguars, and he throws for 17 touchdowns. It's like, but I can get that from fucking Daniel Jones. At this point,
for
is what
sure
people are thinking of.
Lawrence reminds me of Dak though, in that like he's gonna lose you some real life games. He's gonna throw but he's like a very willing thrower, like over the middle, downfield. He turns the ball over in the red zone. He does a bunch of frustrating stuff, but he's willing to take chances. Yeah. And he's got a big arm. You can load him up with volume if you're like able to deal with a semi-erratic quarterback. But like, what is Baker Mayfield if not semi-erratic? Right. He's coming from a similar type of, there's a similar mental makeup in some ways to the way that Lawrence and Baker play. And we've seen Dak absolutely crush for fantasy. Just, in the right, when it all comes together in terms of the passing volume and the weapons playing really well. And, a couple years ago it was Dak and CD. Like that was the answer. I think you could pretty easily see the answer be Hunter or Thomas and Trevor Lawrence. Like, I think it does have that kind of ceiling to me, just with how good Liam Coen could ultimately be in terms of unlocking some of the potential here with the weapons and the high upside passer that Lawrence, I think, still is. He's been disappointing, but not bad.
Right. It hasn't been like straight disastrous. It just has been disappointing because the bar was so high.
Exactly.
I'm totally with you. So the Jags, we'll get to this one in just a second, but the segue, the Jags are essentially my highest owned stack. This is not necessarily including a quarterback, right? Drafting teams with 2 or more players from the Jags are my second highest, but Lawrence is my second highest stacked. Nice. As you also see Purdy on there. Yep. And we'll get to this guy in a second. But I mean, I'm totally with you. I did want to show this because I'm absolutely terrible about bringing up the fact that, you can get 40% off of these Spike Week tools with promo code LEGUP if you subscribe to the Legendary Upside premium, newsletter, everything you get over with Pat. And this Draft IQ tool is one. This is through 186 teams so far this year. So I'm pretty into the Jacksonville stuff. I don't really have a lot of notes even to add in that regard. You pretty much nailed it. I don't really see that much, not even that much downside, honestly. And you talked about these guys, but I think Brenton Strange is just an awesome.
He's an late
round tight end. You can back your way into Jag stacks. Of course, I would like to have.
That's such a good point.
But you can back your way into Jags, that we like to call them oh shit stacks or backdoor stacks or whatever you want to call it. It's like if things don't go your way, you tried to stack the 49ers, you did want to stack the Bears, whatever, things didn't go your way. It's like take Lawrence, and Strange is available later. And I really like Jahmyr Brown at these prices.
Yep.
Jahmyr Brown feels like another Jaguar, different regimes, different all that kind of stuff. Remember Zay Jones? When Zay Jones was it feels very much like that, like this veteran who you're like, he's flashed sometimes, he's interesting, right? Jahmyr Brown's never going to be a superstar. Zay wasn't going to be a superstar, but it's like
1 week.
This dude's gonna play. He's gonna play. He's going to play. Even if Travis Hunter's playing wide receiver, and even if Parker Washington gets the slot job and he's the wide receiver 4, Travis Hunter's not going to run every single route of all time. Neither is Parker Washington. They just paid the guy a little bit of money.
I bet you Hunter also gets some work out of the slot, and I think Thomas will too. They're talking about moving Thomas around. So
Diami's he's gonna play. He's clearly flashed something that's not. I don't know what Diami is, but I know he's not nothing, and I know he's going to be on the team. He's free. He's past pick 200 on DraftKings. He's free in drafts. I can backstack him. I can add him into stuff. He can be chaperone. He can be, that he can play that the Tyquan Thornton for your winning team, where it's buddy, just give me that one game
week,
late
man.
when he just fits this awesome role that right now I'm drafting a ton of Diami. He's rising, and I think it's only going to continue his rise. So if you want to get some cheap, I would do it right now.
I agree. Yeah, I could see us eventually getting excited about the Jaguars. It feels like we should. I mean, Coen's resume from last year is very exciting. It's a little, it's thinner than Ben Johnson. I have more confidence that Ben Johnson is a needle mover as a coach than Coen. But, I was not. Peterson got a lot of kind of. The thing with Peterson was that he's coming from Urban Meyer, so there's this delta between the two that was going to be pretty big because of how bad Urban Meyer was. I mean, he was the first.
How could it be worse? How many times did we probably say, "How could it be worse"?
Yeah. Didn't know who his players were.
Literally playing grab ass. Not even. I've never been able to say that a head coach was literally playing grab ass, but that was Urban Meyer.
Yeah. So. You go to Peterson, but Peterson got, they had that magical run with Nick Foles and win the Super Bowl. But Peterson was never a coach that from a offensive design, it's like the Andy Reid, he's like a lesser Reid disciple, it's like there's a lot of potential room for improvement here. And Coen, I'm legit excited about what that upside could look like. So maybe we do end up getting some of that hype, but I don't know. I feel like sometimes these narratives get set a little earlier on, and it's what it's going to be more player specific from here on out to a large degree. The offenses that we get really, really excited about may have already been kind of identified. We'll see. But man, it would be really fun to be able to draft these Jaguars pretty close to these prices the rest of the way. They're just one of those offenses you could see taking a major step.
I also just want to shout the running backs. I'm sure everybody has their flavor, right? We don't got to dive into the differences between all three. But what I would say is that there's no chance that the prices are right on all of these Jaguars running backs. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I know exactly which one of the three or two of the three it's going to be, but it's just really not even if they're not as good as we're talking about here, even if Liam Coen is not him, bad teams score running back fantasy points too. Like Amir Abdullah was scoring fantasy points on the Raiders with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Like it's just not really possible to me that all three, whether one of the guys just takes over or somebody gets hurt, somebody gets traded. Like I don't know how it's going to shake out, but this like we're taking like every other backfield before the Jaguars back, like legitimately.
And the one that I think if we were drafting backfield points, the Jaguars would be
way
not
higher.
like super high, but they would be they wouldn't even be
not
close
last
to like one of the last ones you took.
Yeah.
Not even close. So yeah, you know, it's kind of delightful and kind of like, what are we do? Why can't we get better at this? That, you know, that ambiguous backfields is still like a gigantic edge, but it is, and let's use it.
Going on year 5, I'm gonna be 40 years old, being like the biggest edge to best ball is ambiguous backfield. Like God, but it is true. The market, and I'm not saying that there's like, I'm not even saying that there's like a great right answer. I just know that the market is terrified of the uncertainty around backfields, and that just creates a feeding frenzy. It just makes it really easy for us, because like you don't even got to take. You can, right? If you want to say no, ETN stinks, I'm not going to do it. But you also don't have to. It's one of those, you don't have to make it harder on yourself. Like a lot of this stuff is hard. You only draft so many teams. How much exposure do you put into this guy, that guy? You like this guy, you don't like that guy, but how right are you always going to be? Right? There's a lot of that. When we just get an exciting, fun, young backfield, like they're all young, they're all relative levels of exciting on this potentially exciting offense, and they all go outside of like the top 120. Like that's easy. It's just easy. However you want to do it, it's very easy. Another one that is an easy path, an easy thing to see breaking fantasy football in 2025 is you saw my Jalen Hurts ownership. First of all, I just think Jalen Hurts is mispriced in general. There's more to it there's more to it than just this like specific take. But what could break fantasy football? It is not just the Eagles, because I've talked about them a little bit on a few different shows. But like, what happens when these elite offenses that we've talked about here, throw a pass occasionally, like throw a pass? So just looking at last year's pass attempts, right? These are team pass attempts right here. First of all, the Browns threw 661 times, most in the NFL. I wonder if many people even know that. That's absolutely hilarious.
Ken Dorsey, man. Ken Dorsey.
They're just letting it rip out there. But, so you see some of the bad teams actually at the top, which is another thing maybe we'll get to in one of these. But you do see bad teams throwing a lot of passes. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be efficient, right? The yardage isn't incredible, and the Browns threw more interceptions than they threw touchdowns. But shout out to Jameis. But, there's a lot of volume in a lot of bad teams here. And I do think like it's interesting because like the Chiefs did throw a lot actually relative to the entire NFL last year. And we think about them as like, oh, the Chiefs are boring now. And it's like, I don't know, they threw the 6 most passes, and this is regular season, not playoffs, right? But like Giants, whatever. But you scroll all the way to the bottom, and you see the old Philadelphia Eagles with like 220 fewer pass attempts than the Cleveland Browns. 220, dude. They threw 448 passes. But not just them. The Baltimore Ravens, right, with Lamar and Derrick Henry and a good defense and all that kind of stuff, threw 477 pass attempts. And you scroll up a little bit, and I do just want to, Washington's here as well. But the Bills threw 520 pass attempts. I shout those teams out specifically, not just because it's like, oh, they're good and they didn't throw that many passes, but when you have like superstar elite quarterbacks, Hurts is maybe a little different because part of his eliteness is a little bit more of traditional running than scrambling. But like Allen, Lamar, right, Jaden Daniels, these teams have the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And so theoretically, there's a scenario in which they're maybe not winning all these games. They're not playing in the second half with like huge leads. Maybe they have a lead, but they don't have like huge leads. Things go in a chaotic fashion. The Bills, by the way, are one of the teams that look set to, from a defensive regression standpoint, they've been a very good defense for a long time. The Buffalo Bills have. A lot of that is they've aged out. They kept like they kept like trading stuff for these right, Von Miller and who's the corner that they they had Tre'Davious White, and then they've traded for stuff. And so like eventually you got to pay the piper. You don't have the draft assets anymore, and those guys age out. And that's what's happening to the Bills. I know that we're not like excited about Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid and Josh Palmer, whatever. But like I could see this scenario in which these, offenses with the best quarterbacks on the planet just have to throw a little bit more. I'm not saying they throw 660 times like the Browns, but throw a little bit more, like just a little bit. I could foresee that just totally right, because the expectation is, I don't know, Josh Allen's they want to run. Right. They're going to spread it around and they want to run. The Eagles want to run. The Ravens want to run. And it's like, I'm sure they do. But what you want to do and what ends up happening over the course of the season are very different things. And when you have the superstar quarterback baked in, it's easier in a game to say, oh, shit, we need to throw. Josh, put the team on your back. Let's giddy up and go throw. When you have Desmond Ridder and Daniel Jones and stuff, it's like you may be forced into passing more, but that's not really the ideal scenario, is putting the game on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. These elite superstar quarterbacks have that potential, and then they're going to run, right? So for their fantasy value, they're going to run more and scramble more. But if we get more A.J. Brown targets, right, more Keon Coleman targets, more Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers targets, it's like there's still juice to be squeezed. Even though we all agree that the offenses are great, there's still a potential for another step up just through sheer passing volume.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles are probably the most interesting of that from like a season long perspective. The Bills are probably going to have those games, like regardless of how they want to play. Like even last year, they get down, like they just turn it on. And with the Bills, it's more about like the targets aren't super consolidated, and so you got to take your stabs at who's actually going to get targets. But a lot of guys are pretty cheap. So like I take Shakir, and I take Josh Palmer, which I didn't think I was going to do, but like I do because he's still pretty cheap.
I'm going to get over on all the Bills guys because I think, like that. Like there's going to be games where, and one interesting thing about the Bills, just quickly, because you're reminding me, they don't really have outside wide receivers. They have a bunch of like slot type guys, which I find, and I would throw Kincaid.
Well, Keon Coleman like kind of is a big slot, but he has to play outside.
Right. Keon and Palmer is like, who the hell else are we going to put on the outside? Like as a normal boundary wide receiver, they like don't have those other guys. So again, that's another reason to be like, you don't got to love them. I don't love them either, but can they have some big games over the course of the season? Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. But the Eagles really do jump out as a team that could like break fantasy because like Hurts is way too cheap, and Goddard's way too cheap. It probably takes like Saquon missing a chunk of time for them to really like lean into the passing game. But then at that point, Devontae Smith looks way too cheap, and honestly, AJ Brown looks too cheap. AJ Brown, if they were going to throw AJ Brown, like if AJ Brown was on a team that was going to throw a lot, he would be a clear cut first round pick. Clear cut, dude's awesome, one of the best receivers in the league. And we're just very sure that they're not going to throw, which like I get why. They had like a 50% pass rate last year. They were playing like a very old version of football extremely effectively. So
and won the Super Bowl. So yeah,
like they won the Super Bowl. They're probably not going to pass a lot, but like if they do, and then you also do have, Kellen Moore is gone. So it could be kind of interesting. Like, what does it look like if Saquon were to miss time? Like, we don't really have a good sense for what that could be. It could look very different than when Saquon is the engine of the offense, which I fully expect to be the case for as long as he's healthy. But that's one where you're just like, all of a sudden, they have this alternate identity that they could shift to like very quickly and very effectively. Where, okay, now it's on Jalen Hurts' shoulders, but he's got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and like Will Shipley is probably going to be like capable enough. Like the running game isn't going to be like useless. It's just not going to be the focal point potentially anymore. That's one where you're just like one. I mean, and then Saquon's obviously going first, second, third in drafts. So if he were to get injured, that would break fantasy in a pretty big way too. So yeah, the Eagles.
Will Shipley also a little bit more of a passing down back. So to your point, like he'll come in and he'll do some stuff rushing, but his like
he's
best
more game
college trait was yeah.
Yeah. All right, I have a negative one.
Can we do just this because you nailed it? Just a segue. I don't want to turn this into injury stuff, but just on the Saquon point, something that just shout out to Ben Gretsch, who coined it several years ago, and I thought it was just a brilliant term. And I had been drafting this way. You remember Derrick Henry? I think it was his last year on the Titans, maybe second.
Yeah, yeah.
I drafted like an absolute. I literally was like getting memed about like my guy was Darrington Evans that year, which is clearly not a good guy to have as your brand play because he soon was out of the NFL and never was useful for fantasy.
You got some CLV on that though.
A whole lot of I was taking him in the 18th round. That dude was going in like the 13th or 14th by the end of the summer. And I'm not sure if it was smart or everybody felt the like, oh yeah, this is Derrick Henry's backup going at the very end, which feels like Will Shipley, by the way. Like it's
totally
like why
no, I like Shipley
anyway. But the Darrington thing was again very Will Shipley-y, but where Gretsch called Derrick Henry specifically, like and he is the best example of this, is an identity back. For an offense, meaning you build your identity based on how that running back plays, right? They're a superstar. In Derrick Henry's case, he's just this big mutant physical downhill runner, not a great pass catcher. So you're probably going to play in a certain way. Saquon is a very capable pass catcher, but they're going to play in a way where this dude is just going to rip a bunch of big runs and you can't stop him and Jalen Hurts. Why throw? What's the purpose of throwing all these passes? We're not trying to do because if anybody gets hurt, right, that can break, right? Rashee Rice broke fantasy last year and Chris Godwin broke fantasy last year in very negative ways, but Christian McCaffrey in a negative way last year. So we're not trying to do the injury thing, but there's certain players where when they get hurt, it changes the outlook of the entire offense. So it's not just like Joe Mixon goes down, like, all right, yeah, that's what they brought Nick Chubb in for. Like, just come do this kind of the same.
It hurts your Mixon shares, but it doesn't fundamentally change who the Texans are.
Exactly.
Saquon missing time would like change who the Eagles are, I think.
Which in turn makes all like 5 guys, right, as opposed to just one contingent value player, right? Mixon would be like 1 or maybe 2, right? 2 running backs contingent value. You know, if Travis Etienne goes down, it's like, okay, Tootin and Tank, cool. But it's not changing anything about the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jags are still the Jags.
Barkley or Derrick Henry, right? If Will Shipley or Justice Hill / Keaton Mitchell are the running backs for the Ravens, it's like the offense changes. They have to start over, basically, right? With the offense. And now it goes on Lamar's shoulders. That's more Zay targets. That's more end zone targets, right? We're not getting 25.
I actually have less confidence that I feel like we might just get a bunch of like Rasheen Ali or whoever else.
Oh no! dead cat bounce on Rasheen Ali.
They bring Gus Edwards off the street. like I think we would get more.
They'd be less effective.
Right, they'd be less effective on the run game, but I don't think that the Ravens would like shift. Like I could see the Eagles like shifting toward the pass in a way that's a bit different. I think the Ravens are. That's been more of their formula. Like they're going to I think continue. They'd be less effective at it for sure, like way less effective. But we saw a couple years ago when it was Gus, what that looks like, and I think they would probably try to make that work like that for. But I think the Eagles. I mean, first of all, the Eagles were so run heavy last year that you kind of have the natural pull of things like where it's difficult to maintain that. Now I think they can maintain that as long as Saquon's healthy because they were so effective and Saquon was so good. They have such a great line and everything. But without Saquon for a stretch, even, it's just like, how are you able to play that style of ball without him? And if they don't even have like another guy right now. I guess AJ Dillon, if he's okay, not. But I don't. That's not going to work.
AJ Dillon,
in
2025.
Yeah. I think I'm willing to bet against that working.
AJ Dillon, Siri's getting triggered about AJ Dillon. She started to say something about AJ Dillon, but I've had people scoff at the Will Shipley's my highest owned player right now, and people scoff at that. Like, don't you know they signed AJ Dillon? I'm like, yes, that's why I'm drafting Will Shipley.
All right, this one revolves around one player as well, but it doesn't take an injury. It just takes one guy not being very good and that one guy is JJ McCarthy.
Ooh, I have
JJ McCarthy
on the opposite
stinks.
side.
Oh, do
I
you?
love this.
Okay.
Yeah,
JJ
I love this.
McCarthy absolutely stinks this season, and it breaks fantasy. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if JJ McCarthy stinks, the whole season's different, right? Jefferson, we're like, oh, I'm taking Jefferson. I'm actually taking Jefferson over Saquon at this point. Oh, that looks bad. He doesn't have a good
Yes.
quarterback at all.
Yes, it does.
We're taking two. You talk about the Jaguars backfield, like, oh, can't be drafting any of these dudes until after pick 100. But let's take two Vikings backs, one of which is probably dust, and the other which is Jordan Mason,
and the other which is touchdown dependent.
The other of which we were drafting behind Eli Mitchell for much of last offseason. And then
this is hurting my soul. This hurts.
And then let's also take Jordan Addison, who's going to get suspended to begin the year probably, but who cares? Doesn't matter. And then TJ Hawkinson, who's the third option on his team, but let's
like
take him as a top 5 tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know what? Like, at the end of drafts, let's take Ty Felton, a player who none of us believe in, but they did draft him
because the Jalen Naylor role was so fruitful last year that we got to run
20 rounds on DraftKings. Let's take
as someone who drafted a bunch of Jalen Naylor. It was great, but I'm not like itching to get the Jalen Naylor like thing again. Right? He just scored a bunch of touchdowns.
Yeah. So I mean, JJ McCarthy, a very, I think, overdrafted quarterback prospect, a guy who heading into last year's draft was initially talked about like it kind of in the same type of way that like a Jackson Dart was like, oh yeah, maybe he'll be a first rounder. And then he did the thing that Dart didn't quite do, where he like jumped up to like, oh no, like he's viewed as a first rounder by a lot of guys. But the initial like what he did as a college player eval was not like locked in top 10 guy. And a lot of it's because he was young. He's got really good traits. People are excited about the upside, but the resume was super thin. And I think he just has a really wide range of outcomes. I'm not betting on this to happen. I actually take a decent amount of the Vikings, and I'm down to stack them with McCarthy. But you wouldn't think like one simple thing that would break fantasy is if JJ McCarthy is just like horrible, and even if he stinks, he'll be good because Sam Darnold was good. Sam Darnold does a lot of really good things. He also will ruin your season at some point. You have to wait and find out when he's going to melt down and see ghosts. He's going to at some point. But until then, he can be pretty fun. McCarthy, like, there's a whole nother level of stink below what Darnold can do. Darnold, even with like the Panthers, he had some moments where he was actually kind of fun. McCarthy just not being able to hack it as an NFL starter and then having to like shift to the run, which this team is not really built to do. They're built to like, they're a fun team because they pass and then they use the run to support. They're like the reverse 49ers where it's like it's built around the run and the pass complementing each other, but the pass is very much the focal point. The run is not, they are not set up here to be like the engine of the offense is Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Like that's not how this works. So, O'Connell is such a good head coach. I could actually see him overcoming like McCarthy being worse than Darnold, but not a disaster. But I don't know. I think there are worlds in which JJ McCarthy is just a bust, just a straight up kind of can't play bust. We've seen it from quarterbacks in this range of the draft. Josh Rosen,
did he go 9th
round here, right?
What did he go 9th 2 years ago? I'm already forgetting.
Like 12th, didn't he? 11th.
I'm looking
something like that.
He was selected with the 10th. Yeah, so right in the middle.
Okay, 10th. All right. I remember the double digits. Yeah, there's just some guys in this range that just can't play. We've never seen them. We've never seen him play a single snap of actual regular season football. So that's just. I hope it doesn't happen. But it would be hilarious in some ways if fairly boom bust pocket passer just busted. We're like, well, that takes down like, you know, 4 or 5 really fun picks that we all gleefully made.
5 in the top. Let's just include Jordan Mason in the top 100 because he generally goes there. Certainly when I'm drafting, 5 guys in the top 100. JJ McCarthy would take down. JJ, Addison, Jones, Hawkinson, and Mason all would go down. They're one of the more expensive, generally speaking, one of the more expensive offenses.
With a quarterback who we've never seen play a snap.
Never played. They were cheaper last year with Darnold, who we had seen show at least some flashes. I understand everybody. I don't mean literally everybody. Plenty of us drafted Sam Darnold. He was my highest on fucking quarterback. But there was at least some stuff we could latch onto. Like, yeah, I know it's been overall bad, but there's some good stuff too, right? We don't have the bad, but we don't have any of the good with JJ McCarthy. And for me, I didn't really like him as a prospect, like generally speaking, right? Like in terms of like first round pick quarterback, like franchise build the boat around, not necessarily with JJ McCarthy, but around JJ McCarthy. Now, the boat, or the plane that they've built around JJ McCarthy is a pretty fucking good one. It's a pretty goddamn good one, right? All these players are going there not just because of JJ McCarthy, quite frankly, in spite of JJ McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkins, right? These guys are awesome football players, and they have an awesome coach. A couple other like small things, because I think you also simultaneously made so I won't even make it. But if he's awesome, this offense is gonna fucking if he's better than Sam Darnold, then holy shit. Yeah. If the people who loved him as a prospect are right and this dude is that good, let's go ahead and fucking sign me up for the Vikings. So we don't even got to do that. But if you remember when Darnold melted down at the end of the season, as he tends to do, what was the issue? It's pressure.
Yeah.
Vikings were getting pressured to death by the Lions, and then the Rams. I mean, the Rams in the playoff game was just like, Jesus God, that was brutal. Tough watch. That was a really tough watch, both because he was melting down, but I also straight up felt bad for the guy. He's just getting destroyed.
O'Connell also gave up in that game.
Yeah, 100% gave up. But part of the reason why that was, if you remember, Christian Darrisaw, their stud young left tackle, blew out his knee. Yep. So it's them returning to kind of strength on the offensive line is very dependent upon a young player coming off an ACL tear, which it's modern football. He's an offensive lineman. He's going to wear the brace, whatever. He'll probably be fine. But would I say that's ever a lock? No, absolutely not. So the offensive line is a potential concern. McCarthy is a potential concern. And then from the breaks fantasy in a bad way, you might say, well, they've done it right. KOC has done it. We always, last year, I probably said 1,000 times. It didn't matter who the KOC's quarterback was. Nick Mullins was throwing for 400 yards, right, in these games. That will be put to the test this year if JJ McCarthy does stink. Do you know who the Vikings backup quarterback is?
I don't think I do.
It's a new player. It's not someone who has played for the Vikings or KOC before. I only know this because I'm going to max the Superflex contest, and you got to dig into the backups a little bit more there. And this name is going to make you laugh.
I know it's not, but I really wish it was Trey Lance because that would be the funniest answer.
Similar in that someone at least we've discussed a lot.
Jacoby Brissett?
No, go 1 year further back, who I may have liked a lot that you didn't like so much, who happened to play with Jacoby Brissett a couple of years
Sam ago. Howell?
Sam Howell is the Vikings backup quarterback. So if McCarthy can't play, we are about to put it to the test of KOC's wizardry. Watching Sam Howell
talk about protection issues being a problem.
Yeah.
Good Lord. No one likes a sack more than Sam Howell.
JJ is going to get a lot of targets, a lot of contested targets, but a lot of targets if Sam Howell is playing because he ain't looking to anybody else. It might be a disaster. So, there is no Darnold behind McCarthy. There is no Mullins behind there even. There is no Cousins waiting in the wings. It is disaster city if JJ McCarthy's not ready to play.
Well, let me do a little positivity because I actually agree. JJ McCarthy being really good could also break fantasy. And McCarthy was someone that as a prospect I didn't love, but I did title the post where I did my quarterback tiers 3 and 4 heading into last year's draft. It was titled Dreaming on JJ McCarthy, and I specifically highlighted one of his strengths as throwing to what I call the splash zone, which is 10 plus yards downfield and over the middle, that kind of area of the field that, like Mike McDaniel really has emphasized with, when Tyreek Hill was really cooking a couple years ago. And I a little shout out to me here, because this almost never works, but in March, like a month before the draft, I did like a random tangent about how JJ McCarthy would be a great fit for the Vikings, specifically. And
I love that.
Yeah, he said he has
that for you specifically.
A skill set that the Vikings, a very fantasy-friendly offense, may be working to acquire. It would not be hard to get excited about McCarthy's potential with Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 1, but it's not just the weapons. Kevin O'Connell's system also looks like a great fit for McCarthy. O'Connell's from the Sean McVay branch of the Shanahan tree. His coaching tree is hyper-focused on the splash zone. 2023 offensive coaches from the extended Shanahan tree made up 8 of the top 12 teams in splash zone yards. Texans, 49ers, Vikings, Dolphins, Bengals, Packers, Rams, and Seahawks. So JJ McCarthy has some real weaknesses to his game, but he can move around, he can buy some time, he can scramble a little bit, and he throws really effectively to the middle of the field. So can he kind of play point guard and, really be a little bit like Brock Purdy for the Vikings? I think that he can, so I'm not saying that he stinks or that he definitely will stink. It would be just a really easy way for the season to break. But at the same time, he could also break fantasy by just being really good. So, I think he's an interesting prospect, because I don't think he's that good of a quarterback prospect, but he was really put in an awesome situation, not just because of the weapons, but specifically because of what he does well. I think he really does fit the system well. So I am drafting the Vikings. But yeah, scenarios that break fantasy, that just seems like a pretty clear-cut one to me if he's not good.
100%. If people haven't caught on to this yet, these are not like necessarily our takes. I am drafting the Vikings. I'm drafting JJ McCarthy. I'm drafting Justin Jefferson. I'm drafting Jordan Mason is my second highest owned player. Okay, so like I'm in. Like you're not in. You can't be out on the Vikings and in on the guy who needs to score double-digit touchdowns on the Vikings. Like so I'm very in on the Vikings. So in that, I think I told you I was going to wear this shirt today.
Yes,
the straight cash homie. So you don't purchase a Randy Moss straight cash homie T-shirt and not draft the Minnesota Vikings. Like if JJ can be even remotely what Sam Darnold was last year, which is good, not like elite, like then who gives a fuck, right? If he's better, like Jesus Christ. What I will say about Darnold last year, to like you said, kind of the splash zone, he was ripping it into the splash zone, dude. Darnold was letting it you would see him occasionally over the course of the year of KOC having to be like trust it, Sam, or whatever. He'd be mic'd up and you'd hear him be like, kind of just like encouraging him to let it rip. And like when Darnold would let it rip to JJ and Addison and these guys down the field, man, he was dropping some fucking dimes. And JJ, Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver on the planet for my money. So if you just get competent quarterback play, I wrote down JJ McCarthy is him that was mine of like, what if JJ gets like even better than Kirk Cousins at quarterback? I'm like, oh my God, like imagine him with Joe Burrow, right? What Jamar Chase gets to play with. Like imagine that, you know what I mean? Yeah. And their defense was really good last year. What if the defense isn't as good?
Even Purdy level. Like if he's just Purdy level, then
top 10,
the Vikings are smash. Yeah.
Somewhere around 10 or something like that. Yeah. I'm in. I'm very, very in. It would be, dare I say, it would be straight cash, homie, if JJ McCarthy is that good. In that division, I want to do another one because if there's a running back who I'm making like very early abrupt detours for because of this specific scenario, I much prefer, like you outlined at the very beginning. I mean, the wide receivers are just so fucking good in the first 15 picks of these drafts. That's before we get to Bowers and all that kind of stuff, right? I get it. But I can't unsee what Jahmyr Gibbs did at the end of the season last year when David Montgomery was injured. And then even when David Montgomery came back, and now David Montgomery's a year older, Ben Johnson is gone. What does that mean? I don't suspect it means anything. I would guess that David Montgomery plays about the same role that we would, expect, right? But what happens when they just say, we're wasting a lot of touches on David Montgomery?
Yeah.
That Gibbs guy is pretty fucking good. And he is pretty fucking good. And they just give a little bit more, right? And it becomes more of like what Demont is Algier to Bijan, as opposed to like 55-45. Like Algier is like every third series, right? And maybe if he gets a little hot hand, Algier will play. So it's more like 70-30. If Gibbs gets 70% of the Lions backfield, he might be the 101 then, like already.
Yep.
And so I am making sure, and I faded Gibbs last year. I feel almost worse about fading Gibbs last year than I do about Saquon because of how it played out. It's similar. I would put them similar. I shouldn't say worse. I would put them very similar, to where it was just like this path to this superstar, right? Just like Barkley was just like, Saquon, just be Saquon, but now he's on the Eagles. Gibbs was like, just be Gibbs, and a little thing kind of shakes out your way, and then it's fucking 35 fantasy points every week. That's like, that seems good. That seems pretty good. For not even having, sometimes you can get him like 7th, right? Overall, you might still get BTJ falls. You might be able to get BTJ with Jahmyr Gibbs in a draft occasionally. Like, I don't know, man. That's not something.
I haven't had that. That would be fun.
But you just get crazy stuff, right? You can definitely get like a London. You can definitely get an AJ Brown. You can get Brock Bowers. Like, you can get that stuff with Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think it would be foolish to forego that opportunity for me personally. Like Saquon, it gets like, it's harder to get one of those wide receivers or Bowers with Saquon, right? You can't make it happen as much. Whereas Gibbs, he just does fall enough. Like, the market prefers Bijan to Gibbs. I do not. I prefer Gibbs to Bijan. I'm not trying to slight Bijan. I'm just saying
I'm with you. I think
otherworldly scenario in where Gibbs.
Yeah. I've been. My general take is that I just don't want to, like, I'm not taking big stands in the first round. To the extent that I am taking a stand, it's kind of breaking ties to CeeDee Lamb over those two. But if I was just gonna like be in one draft and you're making me take a running back, I would take Gibbs, I think, over Bijan.
Me too.
But just because of that extra, that's
CD 102. To your, I just wanted to add that context. CD is my 102, but Gibbs is the guy where I'm just like, why are you fade? Like, why would you get underweight this guy again? Like, I could probably make the Bijan pitch, right? I can make the Saquon pitch. I find it very difficult to make the Gibbs pitch of, like, other than you're just right. You're doing the 0 RB bro thing to do the 0 RB bro thing. I find it harder to make the Gibbs pitch because of this.
Bijan's pretty easy. It's like the guy he shares with is pretty good. It's not a guarantee that he gets the full, like, everything workload. And he functionally has a rookie quarterback who just might not be that great. And
they literally did not upgrade the offense with one single
at all
asset.
Yeah. So it's just like, this is actually kind of an underwhelming offense. Penix isn't it. He's not terrible, but he's just not like a guy who's, he kind of struggles, has a bit of an up and down year. And Bijan has like 65-70% of the snaps, and Algier steals enough to matter. And he goes next year he goes like kind of where Josh Jacobs is going this year, or where Jonathan Taylor's going this year. So it's not like he's viewed as this can't play running back, but he isn't, he's not the guy who's just going to dominate.
He doesn't rip a ton of like Gibbs. Every time you touch the ball, you're like, if the first guy doesn't tackle him, like, is this it? Is it gone? Right. And like Bijan Bijan is spectacular. No one is sliding Bijan. He's awesome. I love him, but he's like the football man's running back. You know what I mean? Like, making guys miss, like with flash, because some of the stuff, but like, you'll get the guy, he'll get the 4-yard carry, and whoever on social media posts a clip and watch this jump cut, right? Watch this Bijan jump cut. And it's like, Gibbs doesn't do that, but Gibbs just like gets to the sideline and see ya, gone, right? Like, it's not a knock on Bijan. I'm just saying, I see this, and maybe I'm latching on to last year too much, but I kind of felt it last year. Like, I didn't draft Bijan draft Bijan last year, and the Lions have something to do with it too, right? When you're on the Detroit Lions, it's just functionally a different situation
That's
than
really
the Falcons.
Yeah, like the Lions, I think have such a higher floor of
Yeah.
they
Although
the
Frank Ragnow's gone, brother, it's over.
Ragnow's gone. Yeah,
It's over.
but I still think they have a higher floor. You kind of I know Ben Johnson's gone.
Yeah.
So maybe the floor is a mirage, but I don't think it really is because like what Jared Goff is, Amon-Ra is awesome. Jameson Williams is maybe not going to pay off on the hype, but he's a very good number 2 option and one that adds a lot of value from a real life perspective with his speed and ability to attack deep. And then Sam Laporta is a really strong weapon as well. So they have great weapons in the passing game and a quarterback who, as long as you give him enough protection, is very capable of executing. And they're built around the run. Like this is fundamentally Dan Campbell's still the coach. Like they are built around the run and play action and all of that. And then Gibbs is a superstar. Like that's the big, like Gibbs is a incredible running back and a great pass catcher as well as an explosive runner.
That was his best skill coming in. Where it's no one has forgotten, but coming in like at Georgia Tech and Alabama, it was a lot of it was like mostly in the pass game that he was doing all this work.
Yeah. So anyway, when I just think about kind of the ranges, it's tough for me. Gibbs is the guy where if I was just going to bet one team, one running back, it would be Gibbs over Bijan for me.
I agree.
All right, I got one more.
I have one more also.
All right. This one is kind of underwhelming, but I think that's in a way the point. Here's something that could break the fantasy season. The Browns actually find a decent quarterback.
That's a good one. I like this.
The Browns, I don't know who it is, importantly. But the Browns,
you can't pick between the 5.
No, I don't know. And I'm not gonna. But if I did, it would honestly probably be Dylan Gabriel. But I'm not picking. Officially not picking, but it's Dylan Gabriel.
I got in trouble by a YouTube commenter for making a joke about Dylan Gabriel versus Shador. I didn't mean it in any inappropriate way. I just meant it that Dylan Gabriel went 2 rounds before Shador, and no one gives a flying fuck.
No one
about
cares.
Dylan Gabriel.
Right. They act like he was like a 7th round pick. He was drafted 2 rounds ahead of the guy. He's now like presumed to be behind. So I think by far the funniest outcome is if Dylan Gabriel is good.
Oh, yes.
But it doesn't. Shador could be really good, right? Flacco could play the whole year. Kenny Pickett could get traded for a quarterback who can actually play. There's a number of ways that this could break.
That's not what I was expecting. I thought you were going to say like the Eagles fixed. His hands grew while he was in Philadelphia or something.
No, I have no faith in Pickett. But there's a number of other outs, and you have Quinshon Judkins installed as like an immediate starter. Did a draft with Pete this morning on Best Ball Breakfast. He went in like the mid to late 7th round. He could pay off that price tag in a huge way. And obviously he's more of kind of the 6-7 turn, but kind of clear cut starter. Has been used a bit as a pass catcher. I think he could be like a true 3-down guy. I know his prospect profile is a little shaky on the pass catching side, but I think he could get some of that.
Like Najee in the pass, right? Like he can catch the ball.
He can catch the ball. Yeah. So he's obviously could pay off in a big way. And then Judy is going to be underpriced if they get any kind of quarterback play. Njoku would potentially be a huge winner. Harold Fannin in the 20th round of DraftKings, like, come on, that'd be pretty great. But like Cedric Tillman becomes all of a sudden one of the flyer guys. Like the late round receivers that looks like an absolute smash. Potentially if they find a quarterback and he picks up where he left off a bit. From some of the games he was posting last year. So it's like an offense. There's not like that many pieces. They don't really have a slot guy. So it's like 2 receivers, a tight end.
I got their slot guy. You've officially motivated me to put this guy in the ranks. If you watch all the highlight clips of all the Browns, of which there are not that many in the passing game on social media, there's a receiver who's a 2nd-year player who maybe some people liked last year, but didn't get great draft capital and then landed on the Browns, right?
Thrash?
Jamari Thrash.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Thrash keeps popping up on. Go watch the video. You're like, why is every pass highlight to Jahmyr? Where's Jerry Jeudy? Like, where are the other guys? Jahmyr Thrash is in a lot of these catching from all the from all the quarterbacks. And I've been like, I haven't taken a stand on who not that that's exciting to take a stand on who the third wide receiver is, but I think I'm just going to move Thrash into the rankings. I don't have a third Browns wide receiver ranked right now, so you're motivating me to grow up.
Okay, all right, I'll dig in on some Jahmyr Thrash, but this would just be a fun. Now, does it break the fantasy season? Maybe not, but it's such a divergence from like what we think is going to happen. If the Browns actually have a quarterback, they're just such a different team than we thought. And then Tommy Rees is kind of interesting. He was a name that was floated as a potential Patriots offensive coordinator, and because he had ties to Vrabel, Vrabel spending time with the Browns and all of that. So he's seen as like a kind of interesting young offensive mind, and probably more in the mold where there's going to be balance to the offense. They're not going to just like lean on the pass like Ken Dorsey did, but maybe effectively pairing the run and the pass. And Judkins would really be like, this is a path to where Judkins is the 202 next year.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. If you want to still bet on that backfield, but without maybe you're squeamish on this Judkins thing or whatever, right? This is a little bit more of a contingent value, or I don't know how we don't know how the Browns backfield will shake out. I mean, it's two rookies. Who the hell knows? We don't know. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback or the running back on the first snap of the season. For that, I think I would bet on Judkins, right? Of course, but like, yep. It's a crazy situation.
If it was Ford, it wouldn't be, or Sampson.
It wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah.
But like Dylan Sampson, you want to talk about a guy who will free fall in drafts because it's the Browns and nobody likes them, and we have Judkins assumed there, and then people don't really know what Jerome Ford is, and then Sampson, he's a 4th round pick. I think he was a fun prospect, but it's still a 4th round pick behind another rookie. It's hard to see. So you'll get in rooms again, especially on DraftKings, like he might get there to round 20. Dylan Sampson, like he falls like crazy. You shouted out Harold Fannin. I just wanted to mention, like, if you want to parlay, you want to parlay one. This is my honorable mention because I want to mention Harold Fannin because who the hell doesn't like Harold Fannin? But if the Browns find a quarterback, right, Gabriel or Shador or Flacco or whatever are really good, and Harold Fannin is the island of misfit toys, like the NFL, you guys are all fucking stupid, and he fell to the 3rd round, and he's really this good. Like, that's great. Like that.
Like maybe production matters more than like which direction your feet point when you run.
Maybe being one of the best wide receivers in all of college football while playing tight end at fucking Bowling Green with a insurance salesman throwing you the ball. Like
maybe having more yak than Luther Burden had yards is good for a tight end.
Yeah, again, with a dude who is he's probably lucky to sell insurance this year. Like all these kids are making all this NIL money, and Harold Fannin's quarterback probably didn't make a fucking nickel at Bowling Green. And that's who he's like shattering all these tight end records with that guy. And like you said, because he's a little bit smaller and he's
like 242 pounds. It's not even that small.
He was also an outstanding. He came back and they were like, you got to put blocking on film if the NFL is going to like you. And he blocked his nuts off all season. He was awesome as a blocker. Like, is he ever going to line up and like be the first inline tight end in a goal line formation? No, but neither is Travis fucking Kelce. So like, who cares? Like,
they don't
Travis
need him for
Kelce
that. It's not the point.
Hasn't learned how to block in 15 years in the NFL. Like, if he's that guy, if the NFL's wrong and Harold Fannin is that dude, and one of these quarterbacks can play, he's highway robbery in the last round.
Yes.
Like, I don't care about Njoku. Like, Njoku can play too. Like, we'll figure it the fuck out. Like, if he's that good, it just doesn't matter. So,
no, I mean, the hope is that it's not Thrash, it's him. That he's basically their slot receiver. They spend a lot of time in 12. That's where like Reese's philosophy could make a big difference compared to Ken Dorsey, where they're in 12 a lot more. They're utilizing, like, they're like, we can run and pass out of this formation. The defense doesn't know what's coming. We have guys who we can use in multiple different ways, and having Fannin be able to block a nickel corner, right? Not a defensive end, but a nickel corner, or a linebacker is like really important because it allows us to run and pass out of 12 personnel and run that at a really high clip. This doesn't sound like a bullish comp anymore, but he's the Dalton Kincaid, and Njoku's kind of like the more traditional tight end is a Dawson Knox, and then it would
They're
be
like
split
potential
more towards
supercharged
Njoku than
version. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, you get him playing big receiver, playing a slot tight end type of role.
Bowers Mayer last year. I'm not trying to say he's Brock Bowers because he's not, but I'm
Right.
just saying like they played the most last year. The highest rate of 12 personnel was the Raiders because they had Bowers and Mayer and no good receivers.
No good receivers. Yeah.
Kind of the Browns, which is
but the Browns. Yeah. Right. So that's where Fannin on DraftKings 20 rounds. He's so fun. Just so fun.
One last one, which is actually I'm not after last season. I'm not entirely sure where I would classify this in terms of the like good, bad, ugly versus fun or whatever. But what's been just like stuck in my brain like all summer, because we can't unsee what happened last year, but I also can't unsee what happened 2 years ago, and that's the Miami Dolphins. And like, what if last year's not the real Dolphins, and 2 years ago is the real Dolphins? When Tyreek Hill's the 104, when Achane is going in the second round, right? Look back at the Dolphins last year. It was basically what we just talked about with the 49ers in a slightly less version, but Tyreek Hill, top 5 pick, Jalen Waddle, second round pick, Achane, second round pick. We were like, we got to get all the Dolphins. We were drafting Raheem Mostert, right? Which turned out to be the corpse of Raheem Mostert. Granted, he scored 20. I understand. I drafted Raheem Mostert. He scored 20 goddamn touchdowns, and we were getting him in like the 9th round. It felt like this is nuts. We were drafting Jalen Wright. Sometimes Jeff Wilson went drafted because people were so horny for the Dolphins offense and specifically the Dolphins backfield. Jonnu was a little bit cheaper. Obviously, Jonnu's more expensive now, but we were drafting a bunch of Dolphins at pretty hefty prices just last year. Now it went to shit. There's no denying that. Is it over for Tyreek Hill? I don't know. Is Jalen Waddle just really not him? Right? We're talking about all these guys being him. Maybe Jalen Waddle is not him. Are they going to do right? Are they going to do the bullshit dink and dunk Achane Jonnu Smith stuff again? Is the off? I don't know. Right. I have all the same thing as we talked about with like the Bears. I have all the same excitement level. I have all the same concerns everybody else does with the Dolphins. But what if we're fucking wrong? What if 2 years ago, right? Tyreek had a broken hand last year. Tua got hurt again. Like, I don't know. What if it's all fine and they're still that team from 2 years ago, but now we're getting like 2-round discount on Tyreek. Achane's like maybe a few picks, right? Discount or something. Waddle is now a 6th round pick. Okay, Jonnu came up, but Tua's going next to Bryce fucking Young now. like, what if we're just wrong about that? We're only drafting Achane until Jalen Wright, which goes at like pick 180. Like, the discount is so stark now on the Dolphins if we're just wrong about all these concerns and they're 2 years ago, Miami.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, Tyreek Hill's been a guy where when he's at like the 2-3 turn, I'm just like, nope, he's done. But when he goes like closer to Devontae Adams and Mike Evans and stuff, I'm like, why are we like more concerned about Tyreek Hill compared to these guys? Because he fell off more. But he fell off more because he was like way better than them 2 years ago. Like, that's bad.
It's like you're
bad to be better.
Going from Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson. It's like, when we go from like the second best wide receiver on the planet to not that anymore, it's like they're different, right? Mike Evans was never that, right? Devontae Adams was, right? I mean, not for a long time. Devontae Adams hasn't been that.
Yeah, and it's like his yards per route run last year. This is off the top of my head, but it was like within 0.1 of JSN. It wasn't like he wasn't disastrous. He was just he was like half of what he was the previous season. But
it's because of what he did the year before was
because of what he did the year before. Yeah, like that's the thing with Tyreek. I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't seem bad to me that he was one of the most efficient receivers we've ever seen in 2023. Like, if I'm betting on an old receiver coming off like not an awesome year, isn't it better if he was earth-shatteringly good 2 years ago than if he was like also like kind of okay the previous year? Like, I don't know. Don't you want a drop off to have occurred? You know, like,
Yeah.
it, if you know that the season wasn't impressive, isn't it better to have a drop off because then he was good the previous year? Like, I don't. Maybe it really does say something like to drop off from that level to the level he was at last year shows a decline, and we don't want to touch decline. I'm kind of, I guess I could see that being true, but I don't know when he and I see that being true when he goes at the 2-3 turn. At the 2-3 turn, I'm like, dude, his drop off is the biggest in history. What are we doing? But at the 3-4 turn, I'm like, I don't know. He was like the 104 last year. In a kind of the same situation, seems maybe like a huge profit potential. So I know it's like, one round probably shouldn't be enough to shift that for me, but it's just like the types of players he's, and there's a lot of receivers that go like when it's like him versus Rashee Rice, I'm just like, give me Rashee Rice all day,
Every time.
every time. But when it's him versus Adams or Evans, I just am like, why am I not taking Hill, who I have more optimism? Adams, no one thinks is the number one on his team. Like, I don't even think Adams thinks that.
No.
Evans is not really going to be a clear-cut number one down the stretch, assuming everything goes well with Chris Godwin. He'll probably the clear-cut number one to start, but Tyreek Hill could easily be the number one option on his team with like a giant moat to number two.
Yeah.
Like 30% target share. Like, who could have a 30% target share when you're looking, not just like in a game, but like who has a 30% target share this year? Like Tyreek Hill, like there's like no one, like they're all on teams already. Like they've been drafted.
Yeah.
They don't float around in the late third round. So I don't know. Tyreek Hill obviously scares me. Betting on old speed receivers coming off like the biggest decline we've ever seen. Like, yeah, that sounds like an effective bear case that has me pretty worried.
Yep.
But getting the 104 at like in the fourth round, the following year with nothing really changing. It's like same quarterback, same coordinator, or same head coach that's functionally the OC. Now, same terrible offensive line that led to him peppering Jonnu Smith with targets, so that's a problem. Same terrible offensive line that can't protect Tua, who's got major concussion issues.
Yep.
So all of that's scary.
But that existed. We knew that the offensive line was bad.
We did.
After his 3.72 yards per route run season, we were like, yeah, but they're scary because they're really top heavy, right? You and I probably talked about this. I'm like, I was drafting Tyreek last year. Like, I love Tyreek. The Dolphins are a little bit scary because all they did was invest in their right. Mike McDaniel was playing Madden. We probably said that too. It's like Mike McDaniel's playing Madden. He drafts all the fast guy, sorts by speed, drafts those guys, and then comes back for the offensive line. And it's like that doesn't work so great in real life football. And we saw that last year. But can he course right? Can they course correct that? Because that was still the same concern when he had that monster season.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah. So that, just to close on that, I can't unsee what happened 2 years ago. And I'm not going to I think the way that I play and probably the way that you play, like you said, if you don't I'm not taking him over Rashee Rice. I'm probably not taking him over Trey McBride. I'm not taking, there's certain guys like that's just it's a non-starter, but I don't have to make that decision because the market has said, yeah, this dude's real scary, right? That drop off is like mega scary. And I get that, but the payoff is so big. And the payoff isn't so big for a lot of the guys that he goes around. Right.
Yeah.
And I like those guys. Fine.
We're already starting to settle. We're already like, oh, the number two, but it's a good offense and he's a good player.
I am settling for Davante Adams. I don't
think Adams is a bad pick. It's just that it's a different level of upside.
We need to try to win these best ball tournaments, and you're going to lose teams regardless, right? Your whole season, we talked about this a million times, is defined by your singular best team is what defines your entire season. So have that be a team that hits on a bunch of these guys, right? That hits, oh my God, Tyreek Hill is back, right? And oh my God, JJ McCarthy is him, right? And
Right.
Trevor
Right.
Lawrence and Liam Coen is him, right? These I want to have outsized gains. And like, there's
Yeah,
not that many
totally.
third round picks that have outsized gains, but Tyreek Hill has that in his range of outcomes.
I agree. I agree. It's when the other outside gains are really starting to go off the board. I'll do one more bonus round. The Chiefs, right? We
Ooh.
talk the Rashi Rice. That's where I'm like, I'm not taking Tyreek over Rashi Rice. Like Rashi Rice, his recovery looks to be going really well. He was awesome last year. The offense is kind of designed at this point to like really need, someone who can consistently earn targets in kind of the shallow to intermediate area. Kelsey's declining. Like Sean Siegel had a really revealing stat where he's just like, let's just look at Kelsey's yards per reception and how much that has cratered. Like, forget earning targets. Like, when he catches the ball, he's doing so much less with it.
It matches the eye test too, doesn't it?
It
Like
does.
when you watch
Yeah.
him, it looks.
It really does. And Rice, I mean, he's kind of taking over that Kelsey role in the offense, which we know is a huge role, a huge part of Mahomes' ability to, deliver on high passing volume. And then you do have Xavier Worthy having a huge ceiling. He goes in the fourth round. You want to talk about outsized gains? I mean, he definitely qualifies. I think it's like a little thinner of a path to get there. You're asking for a lot more projection in terms of like the player, but certainly you can see how it happens. He's like literally the Tyreek role for the Chiefs before Tyreek left. And then, you do have
is
Kelsey.
wide receiver. It's you're thinking about Rushy is Kelsey and Worthy is Rice.
Rashi's
Or
Kelsey,
Worthy
Worthy's
is
Rice.
Hill. Worthy is Hill.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
or Rashi's just what he was last year. I mean, Rashi was like, gonna absolutely smash. And then Kelsey's pretty cheap. Kelsey's being priced like there's really no difference between him and kind of like any of these other like whatever. I have a tight end. I have a tight end who's definitely a starter. Like he's in that group basically. He's one of the more expensive versions of that. But if Kelsey has enough left to have a few big games, 3, 4, 18-point games, that's hard to find at tight end. And and he's not really priced like he's going to do that. So I think Kelsey's actually got significant upside relative to price at this point. He's also very scary from a downside perspective. Mahomes is cheap. Like the last time Mahomes was this cheap, he crushed ADP, absolutely crushed ADP. So Mahomes could be just
that was his single QB1 overall year, right? I think that was the year he went QB, or was it?
Wasn't he QB1 overall in 20?
Or he's done it twice.
Or 20? Yeah. His original breakout in his first season as a starter, he was just
that was like we looked back and we were like, why the hell was he going at pick 95? What the fuck were we doing?
Yeah, but he had a season a couple years ago where he
threw 50 fucking touchdowns that year. Wow. 50.
I think he was like games. 5th, 6th in the year I'm thinking about.
2022.
2022.
5,200 yards and 41 touchdowns. That work out for you at all?
Yeah, worked out pretty well. So Mahomes is now cheap enough where he could just be have Mahomes could be the answer. And then their backfield, like Pacheco is now in the 80s, and I think not a great pick, but that could look like a really stupid take. And then I'm not really drafting Mitchell, but that could look dumb. I am drafting some Brashard Smith, but that could look overly cautious with me. Like I'll sprinkle in a little Smith, like he could be the clear league winner. When we look back, like you're like frantically searching through your best ball teams, like please let this be a Smith, please let this be a Smith. Like
oh my god, he just got 12 carries and 6 targets, and he's so dynamic, and he's lined up against linebackers on every snap, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of different ways that it can play out. And then Hollywood's now getting to the point where he's cheap enough to where I don't draft that much Hollywood, but I've drafted some because he finally is falling a little bit more. And, he could certainly be one of those guys who kind of like a Darnell Mooney. He could be like the Darnell Mooney.
The Sammy Watkins. He's the Chiefs, the Sammy Watkins of the Chiefs or whatever.
And I think he's probably like dependent on Xavier Worthy not being like him, but maybe Xavier Worthy's not him. So there's a bunch of like a lot of the Chiefs for where they're going really have untapped upside, I think.
It's a great call. And most of these, quite frankly, we like largely agreed, or at least have been like thinking about a lot of the same ones. The Chiefs is a really good one because I think it's really easy because it's kind of been like a little bit of a multi-year trend of like, okay, Rice was great, but like kind of the whole offense is like, once they traded Tyreek, it was like, well, this shit's boring now. And they keep winning, and they're running Justin Watson for 70% of routes and Juju, right? And they're trying to find some of these guys, but it's still just been boring. But then it was like, well, they hit on Rice, they hit on Worthy, that they did actually, as we saw earlier, right when I pulled that up, they did actually pass a lot more than you think. It's just maybe they didn't hit quite as many like big plays, and it was spread out. Yeah, but Rice was out. Right now, what happens when it condenses? What if Jalen Royals is him? What if Jalen Royals is can come on and maybe Hollywood isn't, right? Or Worthy isn't and Royals is. There's just like a lot of fun ways.
There's also
the
like
Chiefs to be.
Think about Sam Laporta and what he is to the Lions offense. Like Amon-Ra's the clear cut number one, no question. Then you've got a speed number two who, we're expecting to take a step forward compared to last year. He was already the number two option. He's probably going to be more clearly the number two option. And then you have Laporta, who it's like good offense, good player, but he's the clear number three. That's what Kelsey could be this year. Now good player, maybe he's too washed to really deliver on that. But like you have Rice as kind of your Amon-Ra, you have Worthy as kind of your Jameson Williams, and then you have Kelsey as your number three. And if this offense is like humming, they're going to pass more than the Lions.
Way more.
So, that's where, Kelsey is a tough one for me to get excited. And, like using the sidekick and stuff, he'll come up and I'm like, maybe not this time.
How many times?
Not on this team.
Kelsey, we need to create a clip of how many times you turned out the sidekick telling you to draft Kelsey.
Yeah, it's not, I don't like it, but like, man, and I like go and I'm like checking like all the rankings and make sure we have everything, like, do I stand behind this? I'm like, I do. I stand behind it. And should probably draft him more than I do. But next time I do a draft, I'll draft him. Not this time.
It's so true. You have that push pull with like creating rankings and like drafting teams is like, it's on one hand, I do the like, okay, I want to see what happens when I put my feet to the fire, and then I do adjust, right? I do the rankings like before drafts, right? Then it's kind of like an iterative process, right? Draft.
Yeah. Then you kind of get in drafts, and you're like,
oh, hey, actually, I was never. I was never
let me look at
that
this
guy.
But it's not like then every time I'm like, yep, I'm lowering him. It's like sometimes I'm like, I probably should have drafted him.
Sometimes you're biased in the draft.
Yeah, in the draft, you're biased. Yeah.
Yeah, but then other times you're biased, right? When like you're going through your spreadsheets or whatever and putting so that push-pull is actually kind of fun. So the kind of iterations over the course of the summer are really good. And I think Kelsey might be if you created a thumbnail for who is on that show where you're talking about that rankings, it probably is Kelsey, because you're right. You stand like you put it together and like you stand by it, but then you get into the draft and you're like,
why is Kelsey being recommended? He's washed.
Yeah, it's over. He's the tight end Tyreek. It's like, what do you stop? It's over. You're like, it's over for him.
It's over.
You're like, but what if it isn't? And what if it is, but he still gets,
what if he's Thielen?
Tight end Thielen, but with Patrick Mahomes and not Bryce Young.
He's tight end. What if he's tight end Thielen, who kind of is a tight end himself?
Yeah, exactly. What's the difference? They're him and Kelsey are about the same speed.
Yeah.
So,
because I think like Kelsey's drop off has been so dramatic and such a bummer that like we're gonna project like it to continue kind of at the same rate. But we have seen with Thielen that like sometimes they like these guys like level out.
Yeah,
they don't like crash into the water. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, I get. Yes, dead count bet is really what it is. Yeah. But I guess even like if Kelsey just like he doesn't have to bounce, even he just like doesn't smash into the ocean. Don't die. Just don't die.
You don't actually have to have. Thielen did do the bounce.
It was like he did a bounce. He actually did.
The end of Minnesota, and we were all like, "Oh God, what are the Panthers?" Like remember when the Panthers signed him to that contract? We were all like, "What the fuck are they doing? Like
Yeah.
that is so ridiculous.
Truly.
And it turned out to be
It
fun.
turned out
Like
okay.
I mean, I don't think it was great, but it was fine. Kelsey, like you said, Kelsey doesn't need to do the bounce part like Thielen did. He just needs to remain alive when he hits the ground.
And then be the number 3 on the Chiefs. Like we're drafting the number 3 on the Lions ahead of him. We're drafting the number 3 on the Vikings ahead of him. Right? Like
Jonnu goes next. Jonnu is the number.
Jonnu's probably
arguably
the number
3. 4. Arguably, maybe Waddle's
Pittsburgh.
4. Oh shit, that's funny. Man, John would be the number 1 on Pittsburgh. But yeah, I think I'm with you, Kelsey. Maybe that's a show we'll have to do of the whatever. What I don't know. We need a name for that. Where's Artillery Frost came up with Chaperone? We need the name for the like. I stand by this ranking, but I can't fucking click this guy.
Yeah,
like the difficult click guys. But you're like,
it's like head and heart kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
as I say, not as I do.
Or devil. You got the devil and the angel on your shoulders. Whatever. Maybe that's one we'll have to do because I think everybody experiences that where they're like, I think I'm supposed to take Kelsey here, but fuck you. Like I'm not doing it. But that'll be maybe an upcoming show that we'll do here. Pat's got to go. That. He's got the family in town. Go enjoy the nice people of New York City.
Everyone's nice right now. Yeah, only for about 3 more weeks, but yeah, everyone's great.
I'm gonna go get outside in the nice weather as well here in St. Louis, and make sure, of course, I like to do it at the very end, of a 2-hour podcast when 12 people are still listening. 40% off of Spike Week for the Legendary Upside subscribers. Just quickly, this is the perfect. This really is. I'm about 200 drafts in. I'm sure Pat's a bunch of drafts in. You start to get in, and that's when some of these tools really, right? You do your first couple drafts. Who cares? This stuff really starts to come to life when you've drafted a bunch of teams. You can manage your portfolios. You can manage your player combinations, right? Seeing any possible permutation of the combinations of stuff with your quarterback, second quarterback, tight end, your first 3 picks together. How many times have you taken the first 3 picks together? All that different stuff you can get with Spike Week, and you get the Legendary Upside folks get 40% off. So we're going to get out of here. Go ahead.
I'll just say, speaking of the sidekick, we have some really cool updates coming. Shady Advice used his insane math skills to sim out the best ball season, and that's going to allow us to support a bunch of different formats. So in the near future, we'll have support for alternate formats like Eliminator and weekly winners and stuff like that, marathon, sprint, all that. But we can also then tailor the recommendations more specifically to the contest structure, the advance rate, the final size, because we are going to be driving the recommendations by simulations of the season. So we have realistic fantasy outcomes for every player in the pool for every week of the season, with tens of thousands of simulations that are driving it. So that is pretty big upgrade. And if you're a Sidekick subscriber, you're going to just get grandfathered into that when the upgrade comes. So can check that out all over at legendaryupside.com/sidekick, and we'll obviously have much more when we go live with those updates, but working hard on getting those in your hands as soon as we can.
I love it. Can't get much more powerful than all of this stuff. I also think it's really helpful, just the final nugget of studying you in the right direction and then allowing you to kind of put your flavors, right? That's what all this stuff,
that's why this is useful, in my opinion.
That's what I love about all your tools, all of our tools. Is that's the whole goal, is like we want to help make it easier on you and then let you take your, like, I know, right? I know better, or this is my take. This is what I want to do. I want to have 40% of this guy. I want to do this, that, the other. Like that can be very difficult when you don't have, you're walking the dog or you're cooking dinner or you're just firing away. The tools and stuff can really help with all that.
They don't break when you take a guy you want,
exactly.
It rolls with you.
Yeah, it helps you. Yeah, it helps you when you take a guy that you want that maybe it didn't want you to take. But we're going to get out of here. Go enjoy the summer. Hopefully you guys do the same and maybe take a stroll. Go see some of those nice New Yorkers with your AirPods in. We're listening to this episode, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.